Hey.
Alright, so for some reason, the Most Improved Player award has become a pyramid scheme in the NBA and has turned more into a certificate of progression, and I don't like it at all. Now, the tweet that caused me to think this way right here, apparently ESPN quote-unquote experts decided that they wanted to have a little vote before the season starts about who they think the Most Improved Player for this upcoming season will be. Cade Cunningham came first place at 53.8% of the first place votes. Jabari Smith came second at 11.5%, and then Evan Mobley came third at 3.8%. And these results have me so upset because I don't know why, but in recent years we have just, as NBA fans have completely lost the plot on the point of the Most Improved Player award, and it's lost all value in recent years for some reason. And the issue at the core of this whole thing is the idea of expected versus unexpected. Because most finalists for the Most Improved Player award are guys who see themselves, usually having a big leap statistically, or as I look back through the history of the Most Improved Player award, there were generally two categories that guys fell in when they won the award. It was either a player switched teams and then saw a new, greater, bigger role on the new team that they then went and performed well in, which, again, their numbers jumped up, is either that, or a guy stayed on the same team, but locked down a starting job after being a role player, and ultimately, again, saw more minutes, more touches, more shots that led to more points, rebounds, assists, more stats in general. And again, in both cases, it's just some guy seeing a bigger role, and he goes on to perform well in that role and exceeds expectations is the important part. Because there is such thing as, having a big jump in your stats and not exceeding expectations, as I will show you later on in this video. But first, to set the scene, I wanted to look back in the last decade or so and just show you some of my favorite Most Improved Player award winners. And so I went back to the last decade or so, starting in 2015. For example, 2015 was a really solid year for Most Improved Player. The winner was Jimmy Butler. If you remember, that was his first season of his first breakout season on the Chicago Bulls. After being a role player for the first couple seasons in his career, finally broke out, made the All-Star game, made the Bulls into a winning team, therefore was given the award. I have no complaints. In fact, the second and third place finishes that year were also pretty good. You had Draymond Green finish second, and if you remember, that was the first year of the Warriors dynasty really taking off. So it makes sense because Dre entered the starting lineup, moved Iguodala to the bench, and was a big part of the Warriors being a winning team. Even Rudy Gobert at third. This was his second year in the league, but he went from being a spot minutes guy to cracking the starting lineup, which is a really big jump for someone. And by this point, he had already established himself as one of the best defensive players in the league. Give it to him, I don't care. He was a finalist, that makes sense. Then, ironically enough, 2016 is a good example of the negative sides of the Most Improved Player award. Not necessarily because of who won it. CJ McCollum, I think, was a perfectly fine recipient. Even though he was the 10th overall pick and he was only in his third season when he won the award, he did start off as a bench player who did not get a lot of minutes his first two seasons. His third year, finally cracked the starting lineup, averaged 20 points per game, would go on to become a foundational piece of that Trailblazers team for many years to come. What doesn't make sense is 2015's MVP winning MVP again in 2016, the year we're talking about, and also coming fourth in Most Improved Player voting in the same year that he won a back-to-back MVP. If you don't know by now, I'm talking about Steph Curry. And listen, I understand he went from just winning the MVP to winning it unanimously this year. So obviously, he became a much better player. He saw a lot of progression. His stats saw a boost. But just tell me how the voters thought it made sense for last season's MVP to finish fourth in Most Improved Player voting. How much better can you get from MVP to again winning the MVP? Just use your brains. Anyway, 2017 is another great example of the positive sides of the Most Improved Player award. If you looked back at the top three, it was a sign of things to come, as they were all international big men. Giannis finished first. This was his first All-Star season where he really started to break out and show that, he's going to be a future generational superstar. Jokic finished second, and although this is only his second season, he made the Nuggets a lot better. His stats were starting to see a big boost. He was starting pretty much every game by that point. It was clear that good things were coming. This one also made sense. And then Rudy Gobert snuck back in at the 3rd spot. Can never quite win a Most Improved Player award, but man, did he come close a couple years. Moving on to 2018, it was a landslide vote. Victor Oladipo won it. This one might actually be my favorite one on the list because Victor Oladipo is just such a perfect example of a Most Improved Player. This was his age 25 season, his 5th year in the league, 1st year in Indianapolis after 3 years in Orlando and 1 year in Oklahoma City, and he has a breakout year, averages a career high 23 points, leads the league in steals at 2.4 a game, and ultimately looks like he's going to be a star player from here on out. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Injuries came and stole everything away from him, and it absolutely sucked. But in just focusing on this one season, perfect example of a good Most Improved Player who deserved the award and deservedly won it in a landslide. Same thing for Pascal Siakam in 2019. Obviously, they didn't know it at the time he won the award, but he would end up being a key piece on that championship Raptors team. 100% deserved, makes sense, good. Then 2020 and 2021 both kind of fit the same for me. 2020 was Brandon Ingram, his first season in New Orleans, and then 2021 was Julius Randle, his first season in New York. Now, both these guys had already had pretty solid careers up to that point, but both switched teams, saw a bigger role, and then proceeded to play better in that new expanded role. So again, they fit that category that I mentioned earlier in the video at the top. So even though neither the Ingram or the Randall awards were my favorites, I will admit they do make some sense. But then we get to the 2 most recent years, the 2 previous years, with Ja Morant winning it in 2022 and then Lauri Markkanen winning it last year in 2023. And this is where things get interesting because these two are on completely opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to a good Most Improved Player and a bad Most Improved Player. And again, this comes back to the whole idea of expected leaps versus unexpected leaps. It's the same reasoning why Steph Curry was a terrible choice for a finalist at Most Improved Player, whereas someone like Victor Oladipo makes 100% sense. Because back in 2022, Ja Morant was in his 3rd season in the NBA after a phenomenal rookie season and a really good sophomore season that, although it didn't see a huge boost, he did get better. Then he has his year 3, 2022, where he sees another boost, a larger boost than he did the year prior, and for some reason, people were just blown away for some reason that a 22-year-old continued to get better at the game of basketball after already showing great signs of being a generational talent. It's like the voters just expected him to be a 20-6 guy from age 22 until he retires, which is just not realistic. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, we have Lauri Markkanen, who, again, even though he was a pretty high draft pick, he was a lottery guy, had a great sophomore year for the Bulls back in whatever year that was. But he had a pretty terrible year 3, gets traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers where he has a solid season, helps them win games, but is clearly not a right fit for them, gets traded to Utah in the Donovan Mitchell trade, and he finally hits the category where he is someone being traded to a new team, he sees a bigger expanded role, and most importantly, he exceeds expectations at that role. In fact, he was an all-star, which was so surprising. Like, if you told anyone at the start of the season that the Utah Jazz would not only win a good amount of games but have an all-star, people definitely would have called you a crazy psycho for that. And I just wish we would focus more on these types of stories for Most Improved Player, rather than focusing on future star players who are taking leaps that we expect them to take. And I'll come full circle back to the tweet that started this whole rant and has pissed me off so much over the last day or so, because Cade Cunningham should not be anywhere near a Most Improved finalist list, and neither should Jabari Smith or Evan Mobley. Like, for real, Cade Cunningham was the first overall pick 3 years ago, right? I think it was 3 years ago. It's not like he's been bad. He had a really good rookie season. His second season was cut short because of a season-ending injury, and now here he is in the offseason before year 3, cooking Team USA in scrimmages, and do people just forget that he's a good basketball player? He just there's no need for him to be in anywhere near the Most Improved Player finalist voting award at all. And the same goes for Jabari Smith and Evan Mobley, both also top 3 picks within the last 3 seasons that have already proven that they're going to be future stars in this league. Like, just make it make sense. Do the experts just not care? about the most improved player award, because if they don't, that's cool. You know, there's probably a lot of you right now that are watching this video saying, you know, why do you care so much about the most improved player award? And damn it, I care about the integrity of this league. You know, show me an Anthony Simons, show me a Franz Wagner, show me I'm blanking right now, but show me someone who was previously not touted as a future All-Star that will now, after the season, look like he's gonna be a future All-Star because of how much he exceeds expectations this season. Those are the guys that should be winning this award. The Most Improved Player award should not be some lousy certificate for guys to get as they become star players after being drafted within the top 5 picks. It's a very minor thing, but it's something that has just been pissing me off the last couple of seasons. John Morant was the worst of it. That Steph Curry vote back in 2016 was also ludicrous. I'm happy that we started to set the ships right with Lauri Markkanen last year, but there's still some work to do, especially based off of this tweet from, again, the ESPN experts. Anyway, that's enough ranting from me on a topic that does not need to be ranted about. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you all in the next one. Hope you all have a good one.